And obviously my argument is, I feel that atheism is a blind leap of faith. I don't think there's anything that really supports atheism in a solid way.
Or God just anteed up the game, I guess, eventually. Just, you guys are, it's too tough, it's too easy right now. Majority of you guys are all going to hell. Because the majority of people in the world aren't Christian. Majority of the people in the world are other than the Gentiles. They're Jews, they're Islamic, they're Hindus, they're your whatever. So once again,
before there was even a
you could be
Jewish
so what basically
before
what
God
you're saying
revealed
is,
himself
what
to
does it
humanity.
say about God who's created an earth and created such a small population of that earth which is going to heaven? The rest of those people are unbelievers in his prophet, okay, and they're all going to hell. So what does that say about God, who all the people other than you are going to hell? All the people other than your American white bread Christian people, hell. What does that say about God?
Sir, I got great news for you. There are far more followers of Christ outside the Western world than there are inside the Western world. Christianity, faith in Christ, is not a white Anglo-Saxon phenomenon. The vast majority of followers of Christ live in Asia, Africa, and South America. There are relatively few followers of Christ who have the same color skin that you and I do. We're not talking about the great white way.
Okay, but what about the rest of the people in the world who don't believe in God?
We have to divide those.
Sorry, don't believe in your Christ. Let's put it that way, because most of them do believe in a God. They just
Exactly.
your God. And what you're preaching is but if you don't believe in my God, you go to hell.
I never said that once.
You said that.
You're doing a very good job putting words in my mouth, but I never said that once.
You said if you don't believe in Jesus, that you go to hell. You said,
No, I did not say that. What Christ said was that you need to believe in me. I'm just the mailman. I'm delivering the mail. I'm not calling you to put your faith in me. I'm asking you to be open-minded enough to read the Gospels, examine Jesus for yourself. Now, you've asked a very good question, which is, what about those who've never heard about Christ? How is God going to judge them? I do not know, because Christ never specifically addressed the question. But the Bible makes a ton of points that apply to that category of people who've never heard about Christ. First point, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. You don't have to hear about Jesus Christ. You don't have to read a Bible in order to understand. There is some type of God, the Creator, who creates the heavens and the earth. And there are going to be a lot of people in heaven who simply had that rudimentary revelation, general revelation. God has revealed himself through creation. And I worship the Creator and not the creation.
and all of your people who didn't make that leap of understanding they all go to hell.
No, people who run away from God will be allowed by God to continue to run all life long. In other words, sir, you shouldn't be too upset about hell, because all hell is God's affirmation that your free will is important. He takes you seriously. If you want to live your life separate from him, he will grant your decision. You can spend eternity separate from him. If you want to live your life together with him, you can spend eternity together with him. He respects your free will. Secondly, sir, the reason why you should be grateful there's a hell is because if there is no hell, sir, evil ultimately wins. All hell is the destruction of evil. Now, if there is no hell, the good die young, sir. Warped, powerful, evil people get away with murder, and they never get caught. All Jesus is saying is, because God is good, he guarantees that evil will ultimately be defeated, and goodness and righteousness will ultimately win.
That's a pretty neat little message, though.
That's a pretty exciting message.
Hey, don't worry about it now. They'll get there.
Oh, no. The moral relativist does not have to worry about now. But if you are a theist who believes that God has created real values, that means you are responsible to fight for justice, to labor for the triumph of the dignity and sanctity of human life, for an end of racism. I have a dream. My dream is that little black children and white children are going to play together on the red sands of Georgia. Where on earth do you think Dr. Martin Luther King got that dream? It's a vision of heaven that the Bible sets forth real plainly. And because Dr. Martin Luther King knew Jesus Christ, because he understood what heaven will be like, in the here and the now, you fight racism and you make the state of Georgia more like heaven will be. And you make the United States more like heaven will be. Why? Because you're a moral relativist? You say, well, it's all relative, it really doesn't matter? No, it's because you understand there are moral absolutes, like respecting the value and sanctity of life. And therefore you give yourself, like Dr. King did, to fighting injustice and racism.
Astronomy argument that you made. I was wondering what those astronomers thought. I mean, they see evidence for cooling of the universe, right? Right? They do.
Cooling?
Yes. The universe.
I don't know.
Okay, fine.
I'm warning you, I'm not an astronomer.
No, I'd imagine that they also told you about the Great Shrink theory. Not only Big Bang, but Big Shrink. Are you familiar with that at all?
The Big Shrink?
Yes.
I have not heard of the Big
The
Shrink.
whole universe, once it will reach a certain point when all the energy that was that existed during Big Bang is spent,
It's spent. Okay, yes, sir, I understand.
that the universe will collapse into a singularity from which it started during the Big Bang. Are you familiar? Do they not acknowledge the theory at all? If they acknowledge
Some people that I talk to acknowledge that theory, yes.
Okay. If they acknowledge it, then how is it not possible that universe had there already was a universe, well, a singularity when our universe started, the one that we know. And what I'm saying is, how does that theory not imply that there is a cycle, a possible cycle? There could be a possible cycle if universe collapses into a single point again.
Right. I believe that's called oscillating universes. Expand,
Yeah.
shrink back, expand,
Exactly.
shrink back.
Exactly.
Fine.
But
That's a theory, but there's no evidence to support it.
there's evidence to support that universe is cooling. That's why.
Yeah, there's evidence that the universe is
and
expanding, and it might run out of energy at some point to
Exactly,
expand.
and what
but then
happens
obviously
then?
the question is, what's going to happen then?
Exactly. That's why
Well, we don't know.
we don't know. But you said that those astronomers believe that before the Big Bang there was some sort of cause for it, right?
Look, guys, it's real simple. I'm convinced that 10 years from now, it's very possible that the Big Bang might be viewed as antiquated. All right? So believe me, I'm not out here saying, wow, the Big Bang, that's where it is. All I'm saying is, based on the evidence today of the Big Bang theory, the evidence is the universe is not eternal. They're not a bunch of oscillating universes. Based on the best evidence we have today, before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Then all of a sudden there was the Big Bang and we had something.
According to the theory, there was no before the Big Bang. There was Big Bang.
At
and
this point,
universe
that's what the
was
evidence
created.
points to. Now, maybe that's going to be shown to be wrong, and I'll be open to that. All I'm pleading with you guys is, come on, guys, let's be open-minded. Let's follow wherever the evidence leads to today, and if we get more evidence, we'll follow that new evidence.
It couldn't be shown wrong. That would mean that they would disprove the theory. It could be expanded. But either way, also I wanted to point out for all the historic events that you cited, for instance, war with Napoleon, the Holocaust, we have more than just witness accounts. We have evidence from the scene that actually happened. We actually still have those the buildings where the concentration camps were.
You bet.
So, I don't think you can extrapolate that to Jesus, right?
Oh, sure. No. Archaeology shows us that Bethlehem was a real first-century town.
Well, no one's denying that.
Oh, yeah, there were people who, in my
Really?
face, denied Nazareth being a real first-century town.
Well,
But then
there
all
were people who
archaeology has
denied
done is,
Troy.
it's shown that Nazareth was a first-century town. But there were many people who used to say, wait a second, there's no archaeological evidence that Nazareth existed in the 1st century. But recent archaeological digs have unearthed farming tools, pottery, some graves in Nazareth that clearly are from the 1st century, that are from BC actually, which clearly show that Nazareth was a very small, insignificant town, but it definitely existed in the 1st century.
You know, from an evolutionary psychology perspective,
Yes?
people, people nowadays, we love sweets because many generations ago, sweet foods probably kept you healthy, and those that didn't eat sweet things died, and that's why all of us today have that predisposition to fatty foods. Well, could it also make sense that people that slaughtered or murdered other people probably didn't make it in the gene pool, and that's why the majority of people, it's not necessarily, we don't kill everybody just because we have that predisposition not to want to. It's not, you get what I'm trying to...
Let's call it evolutionary optimism. We're all getting better and better because we're all evolving to higher levels, right? H.G. Wells believed that, a great British philosopher, insisted we're all evolving to higher and higher levels. World War I came along, but you know what World War I was? It was the war to end all wars. Then World War II came along, and H.G. Wells watched the most highly educated, highly technologically advanced nation of the world, Nazi Germany, commit some of the most horrible atrocities imaginable. H.G. Wells wrote a book called The Fate of Man, in which he writes, "My faith in man is bankrupt. I trusted in the evolutionary spiral going up, up, up of the human species. Now I have watched organized torture return on a scale never acknowledged before. My faith in human beings and the evolutionary process is bankrupt. I appreciate that type of honesty. I don't understand how someone can read about what happened in Rwanda, in Yugoslavia, in a lot of Africa, and Asia in the past 10 years, and try and argue that, oh, we're all evolving to higher and higher levels. Give me a break.
There could be, the moral absolutes could just be a predisposition that we have. It's not that everything's relative, it's just that we've been, we have a predisposition to believe that. That's all I was trying to argue.
What does it mean to have a predisposition to believe that something is a moral absolute?
It's not, someone has to say that this is a moral absolute, but can't we all just have that inborn in our head for...
Exactly. Okay. Now, obviously, when I use the argument that moral absolutes point to the existence of God, I'm hoping that you have not seared your conscience to the point where you're unable to recognize that something's absolutely evil. Because if you have, I have no evidence when it comes to moral absolutes pointing to the existence of God. If I'm speaking to a human being who really believes I can slit her throat or I can give her money to eat lunch, it's just a personal prejudice, then obviously that piece of evidence that I use, the existence of moral absolutes pointing to some type of God, is meaningless for you. I'm convinced, though, that the majority of my atheist friends have not killed their consciences. Instead, they have a very active conscience that ties them into moral absolutes. In fact, all of my atheist friends have very sensitive consciences, and they're quite capable of distinguishing between good and evil, right and wrong. And so I challenge them, ask yourself, how can these moral absolutes exist if my worldview is true, that there is no God? Because if there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human mind, who creates and defines what's right and what's wrong. If there is no God, it's obviously the human mind that defines and creates what's right and what's wrong. So this human mind creates your definition, that human mind creates their definition, that human mind creates its definition. Nobody's right, Nobody's wrong. There are no absolutes. Morality is totally relative, defined and created by the human mind. My experience is that if I steal your backpack, you're going to look me in the face and say, Cliff, you should not have stolen my backpack. When you use the word should, you're appealing to a standard outside of you and me, saying, come on, Cliff, don't you know innately, by exercising your conscience, that stealing my property is wrong? The only way that standard can be real outside of you and me, an intangible standard of justice, of respecting the dignity of a human life, the only way that can be real is if there is some type of God to create it. If God didn't create it, guess who did create it? You and I, which means it's totally relative.
Well, that's what I was trying to make my point about, was that, no, I'm not arguing that I completely believe this. I'm just,
That's okay.
Okay.
You bet.
That God didn't create, didn't say what's right and wrong, but more like the people that believed what was right, those people survived, through the generations, and that's why the majority of people believe that that's right. Now, there's still some that don't. They just happen to make it into the gene pool, into the next generation and so forth. That's why, you always get the, the antisocial person that wants to beat up other people and, kill people, and then you have the rest of us saying that's wrong. But we're just, I'm thinking that we have that, predisposition because our parents, they thought that was wrong, and their parents. And
all right. Okay, one of the reasons that I believe in Jesus is because my experience of right and wrong, good and evil, is exactly what Jesus described. Jesus insisted that all of us are created in the image of God. We have a conscience. That conscience enables us to understand what is good, what is right. But we all, every one of us, also have a sinful nature. We've been scarred. We have a readiness to sin factor. Example, I am very grateful that right behind my head right now, there's not a big screen. Picturing for you in graphic color all of my fantasies, all of my imaginations, all of my ambitions. I would be horribly embarrassed for you to see that. I have a conscience, and when those different fantasies, selfish thoughts, imaginations come through, I have to make a decision. Am I going to live those out, or am I not? I have certain urges to treat certain people in a specific way. My conscience kicks into gear and says, no, don't do that. I am convinced that the solution to the problem of evil in America today is not a social cure. It's the changing of the human heart, the human character, by Christ, by God's Holy Spirit, where He sensitizes our conscience and then gives us the power to do that which we know is good, instead of to do that which we're tempted to do, every one of us. That's evil. Now, sir, that's my experience. I have 3 little boys. I can promise you, they are all sinners. I can promise you they have consciences, and I thrill to watch them learn to make morally responsible decisions instead of doing what they know is wrong.
Okay, as a Christian, you admit that you have a leap of faith, that you don't understand everything about Christianity, you don't understand everything about the world. You said a couple days ago you don't understand why good things or why bad things happen to good people, that God has a plan, and you just must have faith in Him and His power, His omnipotence and everything, correct?
I wouldn't put it that way, but go ahead.
But you do it, like, that is a common term, leap of faith, that you have faith in your God, that no matter what, He is your God, and in the end, everything will work out the way it's supposed to, correct?
I never use the word leap of faith. because when you study the philosophers and theologians who use that word, I tend to disagree with them. But if what you're trying to say is, Cliff, you know very well that you can't prove that God exists, you can't prove that Christ is the truth, you're absolutely correct.
Exactly.
There's no way that I can prove.
So doesn't it make sense that as a person who isn't Christian, that they can have a similar leap of faith about evolution? Again, sorry, I shouldn't have used leap of faith, but they could have a similar view to where they admit that they don't know everything, and that humans as a whole, we're not perfect. We can't figure out everything. Maybe not right now, maybe not later, but there's the whole idea that we're not incredibly brilliant like we like to think we are sometimes, and that the evidence of evolution is there, just as the evidence of Christianity is there. You can't prove that there's a God that created all of existence so many billions and trillions or however long ago, just the same way that you can't prove that evolution and the Big Bang Theory is all interrelated, but that it makes just as much logical sense to follow that under a leap of faith that it does to be Christian.
Okay. As a thinking human being, I have to acknowledge I don't have exhaustive knowledge in any area. That's obvious, right? You get a BS in biology, you don't know all there is to know about biology. You get a master's and a PhD in biology, you don't know all there is to know about biology. You do postdoc work in biology, you don't know all there is to know about biology. Nobody has exhaustive knowledge in any field. No question about it. But that doesn't mean that we don't know enough to keep on studying, keep on building our knowledge. So, before I trust, I demand evidence. When it comes to science, I want physical evidence. I think there is some physical evidence from microbiology. So that is why I accept microevolution as true. Evolution as an origin is not science. Evolution as an origin is a philosophy of science, which states, behind the process of evolution, there's no intelligent mind, there's fate and chance. Now, from my experience and observation of life, I never get order coming about by chance. I don't care if it's a building, an automobile, a wristwatch, your spectacles, this shirt. Every time I push order and design back, I come to an intelligent mind, an architect, a tailor, a watchmaker, an eyeglass maker. Therefore, I have to ask myself, is it more reasonable for me to believe that behind the process of microevolution, there's an intelligent mind? Or is it more reasonable to believe that behind the process of microevolution, there's no intelligent mind? Sir, 100 times out of 100 in my experience in life, there's got to be an intelligent mind if there's order.
You also said before, you said a couple days ago that when you were talking about bad things happening to good people, that you don't understand why that happens, but you gave the example that maybe this bad happens in order for a sort of greater good to occur. I don't remember the exact example you used, but you hit on the fact that maybe that this bad happens, and because God has a plan about it, that because of this bad, greater good will happen to the world. You talked about the bear and the trap and everything like that. It appears to him that you're going to kill him, but you're actually in truth helping him. In your experience, chaos, disorder doesn't ever lead, and chance and all that doesn't lead to order. But isn't it possible that, again, that is just something that you can't see, that you can't step back enough from the whole picture and look at it and say, okay, well, on a long enough timeline, this, and this can lead to this. I just can't see it because I'm not. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. But sir, remember at the beginning of our conversation, I stated to you, before I believe something, I have to have evidence. I can't just say, I'm going to believe this for no reason. For me, that is a blind leap of faith. I am unwilling to take a blind leap of faith. I have great faith in my pharmacist, but there is evidence to support the reliability of my pharmacist. I have tremendous faith when I pass through in my automobile a green light, but it's not blind faith. It's a confidence that the state does not grant driver's licenses to irresponsible drivers. That's why I'm trusting that that driver is going to stop at the red light. I don't stop at my green light. I go right through that thing, well aware of the fact that if that car doesn't stop, he's going to knock me into an early grave. But there's evidence. It's not blind faith. Similarly, the problem of evil and suffering, when you think it through carefully, does not point to God not existing. Remember, we talked about an all-powerful God can choose to partially limit his power by creating us free. Obviously, I believe that happened, which means if I go up to him, smack him in the face, and turn to you and say, God made me do it, I'm a con artist. God gave me a free will. He gave me a hand. He gave me these for the purpose of loving and respecting him. But because I have a free will, I can pervert the purpose of this hand, smack him. And the vast majority of suffering is a direct result of human irresponsibility. But there obviously is a lot of suffering that's not a direct result of human irresponsibility.
I wasn't saying that. I was just using that as an example. I wasn't trying to say that good things happening to bad people and bad things happening to good people, and the whole free will argument, that's an argument against Christianity. I wasn't trying to use that.
Right.
Because obviously you hit that quite a bit before. I was just trying to say that it follows logically that if you can have faith about something that you can't see directly, and from a skeptic's argument, one who does, like you were saying, you only believe something that has been proved to you.
No, not proved,
Or not
evidence.
proved, but evidence.
Right. I don't think I can prove anything.
No, bad choice of words. Something that you have evidence for. Doesn't it make sense that someone who doesn't really believe the evidence for Christianity and God must look for natural causes to such, again, free will, things like that? We must look for someone who doesn't believe in the Bible, doesn't believe in the Quran, doesn't believe in any sort of religious text, that if that's not any sort of evidence to them, that it's the same leap, same faith that they must have in order to believe in evolution, that a Christian must have to believe in God.
You know, obviously my argument is, I feel that atheism is a blind leap of faith. I don't think there's anything that really supports atheism in a solid way. In other words, I'm convinced that in order to be that an atheist is very similar to a criminal. The only reason a criminal doesn't find a policeman is because he's running away. And I think that God has left more than enough evidence for any one of us to believe that God exists.
But that's a self-serving argument. Unfortunately, that line of logic right there is circular, because in order to not be an atheist, you have to believe in God.
No, it's not circular, because you can answer me
in
right
order
now.
to believe in God, you have to, basically what it comes down to is you have to believe in God, and you have to believe in all of this so that, sorry, lost myself for a second. If you believe in the Bible and you believe in God, you don't really have any external proof, any solid proof in that. Huh?
Ask me.
Well,
why do you believe in God, Cliff?
Why do you believe in God?
Thank you. I don't believe in God because the Bible says so. I don't believe in God because the Quran says so. I don't believe in God because the Torah says so. I don't believe in God because any book says so. I believe in God because I observe the order and design in the universe around me. And my experience in life tells me that order and design comes about from an intelligent mind. That's the first piece of evidence that points me to God's existence. Second piece of evidence that points to God's existence is it more reasonable to believe that life comes from life, or that life comes from non-life? Is it more reasonable to believe the rational comes from the non-rational, or is it more reasonable to believe the rational comes from the rational? Is it more plausible to believe that the personal comes from the personal, Or is it more reasonable to believe the personal comes from the impersonal? Sir, every one of those for me is a no-brainer. Therefore, it's far more reasonable for me to believe in the beginning God, a personal being, than for me to believe in the beginning matter and energy. Third piece of evidence for God's existence is moral absolutes. The moral outrage that I experience over the slaughter of innocent children convinces me beyond the shadow of a doubt that there might not be many, but there are at least a few moral absolutes. And the only way there can be a moral absolute is if there is a moral lawgiver who creates and defines that moral absolute. Fourth piece of evidence for God is love. I can promise you, sir, if I had to choose between science and love, I'll choose love 100 times out of 100. Now, I respect science, and I use science, and I revel in science. But to be so narrow-minded that I reduce all of knowledge to science, ay. What a scary view of life. What makes my family go around, what makes my relationships go around, is not scientific equations. It's love, caring, compassion, thoughtfulness, selflessness. Love clearly points me to the fact that there's more to reality than matter and energy. There's this innate human ability to genuinely care. The only way love can be real is if there is some type of spiritual being who creates us as more than just biochemical reactions, but who gives us a soul, a free will, where we can love and care for each other. So it's because of that type of evidence that I believe in God. It's not because some Bible or book tells me to believe in God.
You say that you can't, that order comes from order, and that
Order comes from an intelligent mind.
Well, yeah, well, that you can't see chance and essentially chaos breeding order.
Right.
But what is to say that everything that we have here is order? For instance, the human body is by no means perfect. The very fact that we die says that our physiology is imperfect.
Yeah.
If we were perfect physical beings,
Yep.
that we would essentially live forever.
Good point.
Unless, of course, we were murdered or something like that. But under natural circumstances, we would live forever. The same thing with, we just left my mind, so I'm not going to point.
No, you're good point.
So,
There's chaos.
Again, this is all from a skeptic's point of view. This is obviously for someone who can step back and see everything as a sort of chaos as it is, a sort of controlled chaos maybe, that it does make sense that possibly all of this over a long enough timeline could come from, I'm not arguing the Big Bang Theory, because
All right.
I can't argue. There's no possible way for, I believe, any human living today to really be able to logically argue for the Big Bang Theory. It doesn't really have any evidence today. Whether it happened or not, there is no real evidence for it today. But as far as evolution goes on a widespread basis, from nothing to something, essentially.
Right. Okay. Sir, now, I'm not referring to you in the next comment. I really respect you. I thank you for treating me the way you have. But let me share something with you. Often people use the argument with me. Cliff, you use as one of your pieces of evidence that God exists the order and design of the human body. Baloney. The human body is just chaotic. The reason I get so frustrated and angry with that person is because you and I both know what the dude's going to do if he gets really sick. He's not going to go down there and ask someone on the strip to heal him. He is going to go to the most highly trained doctor he can afford. I have a younger brother who transplants kidneys and livers up at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I am keenly aware of the fact that there are some problems with the human body. For someone to deny the order and the design, the majestic order and design of the human body, is beyond my ability to respect. When you study the brain, the human eye, the central nervous system, yes, you're absolutely right, we're all going to die. But if you can walk away from that, saying there's no order, there's no design, it's a chaotic mess, I am tempted to call you some very mean names, because I think you're playing a game with me. My brother had to study so hard to become a transplant surgeon. He had to study the order and design of the human body so intensely. He's now involved in genetic research, trying to help human bodies not reject a new organ. The amazing intricacy of genetics, DNA, the complexity is so mind-boggling. For some guy to try and honestly argue with me, no, I just really think there's not that much order and design there. It's just all an accident. It's all chaotic. I just say, fine. The next time you get really sick, don't go running to a doctor. Just go out there and get someone off the drag there and have them medicate you. Come on, buddy. You can't live your life that way. Stop feeding me this line. So, you see, that's the way I think. I try and think as practically, as realistically as I can. Sir, I know very well that if one of my children gets really sick, I'm going for the best I can get. And the odds are I'm going to get prostate cancer. Because I live right outside New York City, guess where I'm going? I'm going to Sloan Kettering. Why? Because at Sloan Kettering, they're the best. They know how to handle prostate cancer like just about nobody else. If I was here in Texas and I got prostate cancer, I know exactly where I'd go. I'd go to that guy at Baylor. He's the best. And he's not the best because he just sort of fumbles around inside the human body. He understands the order and design. He can cut that cancer out better than most people can. So that kind of order and design demands some type of intelligent mind. If my younger brother, as brilliant as he is, cannot prevent some bodies from rejecting the new kidney or liver he transplants, are you going to be able to convince me that healthy human bodies just come about by chance? See, that's...
I agree that if someone sits there and says that it's all just chaos, that doesn't make much sense. It's more of a, I look at it from more of a long-term controlled chaos maybe point of view, to where we've been around so long that evolution has, like you're saying, the kidneys, the fact that they don't, that you can't, I just can't give you my kidney.
Right.
It's just going to be great. There's going to be problems.
Uh-huh.
I look at that as evidence of actually evolution, because if it seems to me that if there were a higher power that designed us all, that it would be very easily to interchange. You know, that would not be a problem that somebody would have medically, and that if we all evolved and we are all replicated strands of DNA, basically, that it would make sense that our bodies are incredibly unique in the fact that each one has grown a little bit different, and it comes as no surprise that if you were to get a transplant from your immediate family, it will hold up much better than just a random person on the street. Like, that seems evidence for evolution to me. And
Okay, but then there's the philosophical question. What is it more reasonable to believe there's an intelligent mind behind that evolutionary process, or is it more reasonable to believe there's no intelligent mind behind that evolutionary process?
I'm not trying to answer that question. That's beyond my scope of knowledge.
Okay, but it's not beyond my experience to share with you that 100 times out of 100 in my experience, when you have order and design, there's an intelligent mind behind it. I don't care if it's a building, an article of clothing, a poem, a mathematical equation. Here's another piece of evidence that means a lot to me. You and I are walking up and down the beach. We see some ripples in the sand. I say to you, isn't it incredible what the waves did? You nod your head and say, yeah, Cliff, that's incredible. We walk a little further. We see in the sand, John loves Mary. If I say to you, isn't it incredible what the waves did? You would not be going like this. You'd be going like this. Densely packed information clearly demands an intelligent mind. Do you know that there is more information in the DNA of a single cell than there is in 3 sets of the 30-volume Encyclopedia Britannica. The amount of information packed densely into the DNA of a single cell is incredible. Everything in my experience teaches me densely packed information demands an intelligent mind, be it John loves Mary written in the sand, or whatever the intelligent communication is.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode. Hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to join the family. Also, want to invite you to our church in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's New Canaan High School, and it meets Sundays at 9:30 a.m.